So this is our first attempt at a podcast.
Yes, the first successful attempt.
Yes, it will be successful.
Yeah, I think
we're not result oriented here.
No, it's all about the process.
Exactly, and we'll touch on that later.
It's the theme of the day.
And a little bit of a twist. We're making this a video podcast, as we all can see here.
Content for the YouTube channel, but also for you guys, right?
Yeah, so multi-purpose, all about effectiveness and efficiency.
How do you benefit the most people at the same time?
Exactly, we'll touch on that too.
Yeah.
And so, for those who are new to the channel, I'm Steven.
I'm Wilson.
And we are heavily focused on contracting businesses, trade-based businesses, home services, if you will. And we wanted to share with you guys the opportunities that exist in the trades. And
I think it's the mecca, honestly.
It definitely is what I describe to be a gold mine. Even a national crisis right now when it comes to the need for skilled contractors, skilled labor.
Which for talented business people is what actually makes it such a gold mine.
Exactly.
I mean,
and if you can combine skilled trades with the skills of business, then you can really create something special that can give you freedom. It certainly has changed our lives.
It literally blows up beyond people's dreams. I mean, it's like I think of our conversation with Logan, and there's this one phrase he said that I think about almost daily, where he's like, I knew this was going to be big. I just had no idea how fast it was going to go.
The saying, build it and they will come, really does exist in some industries.
It does.
And when you really focus on certain services that are in huge demand but very low supply, you really do just need to set the business up and do the steps that we teach people and do what you know you're supposed to do. And you tend to get pretty good results.
Yeah, I mean, even like whether it's our process or someone else's process, there's something to be said by having a clear step-by-step plan and sticking to that plan.
Right.
Because we were talking about this earlier, it's like, it's not like it's you versus all your competitors in this particular industry, because there's more people in need than there are people to actually perform the service. Yep. You just have to do a decent job. Right. And it's actually sad to say that, because in most industries, you have to do an awesome job.
Yeah.
But in this industry, people get very wealthy doing a decent job.
Oh, and sometimes even a horrible job.
Yeah.
You can't really do that. If you're a hairstylist, you tend to have to be pretty good at styling hair.
You get one mistake.
But if you're a bad pressure washer or you're a bad house painter, which we have seen plenty of,
a lot, yeah.
They're still making six figures. And you can either be frustrated by that, which many of the homeowners or their customers are, or that can excite you, which it certainly did me when I first got into cabinet refinishing. I realized the bar was set pretty low. And if you just, of course, did a good job, but also did what you knew you needed to do as a business owner, things really just kind of took off.
Well, so for people that haven't heard your story, how did you find cabinet refinishing?
Yeah, so it certainly wasn't by a dream that I had of being a professional cabinet refinisher.
Really? Wasn't your life aspiration?
No, I actually was in life insurance first.
Oh, yeah. That is the top of careers. Everybody loves life insurance agents.
Yeah. They are somewhat of a special breed, especially if you want to make a career out of life insurance. It's very, very market-driven, very sales-driven, and the skills are needed to be good in that industry. But, I was running a life insurance agency, and, sorry, we're finding a plug right now.
Yeah, I gotta find a plug for the, see if this will reach.
Yeah, the good thing about having a really bad first podcast episode is that they're all going to be better.
There's nowhere to go without.
Yeah, so we'll get back to that in a second.
Nice. I thought to myself, I should do this before it starts. And then,
it's a good thought, but
there are people that treat their businesses just like I've done with this podcast and still make a lot of money.
Exactly. Don't worry about perfection. Just take action. And over time, things will get better. And so, like I was saying, I started off in life insurance. And I was heavily motivated and inspired by the Wolf of Wall Street movie.
Of all things.
And, the financial world seemed really exciting to me.
Yep.
Having cool cars and whatnot, obviously, it may not be obvious, but it was cool to me. But what was even more fascinating was building a business around numbers and creating value with somewhat of a non-tangible product. I thought that was cool. And being able to set people up with financial services in a way that can improve their life, and I can make money doing that as well. Okay. And so I saw the movie, was motivated by it, started learning about stocks and things like that. But at the time, I was working at LA Fitness, and I was heavy into fitness when I was younger. And a guy that would come to the gym wearing a Rolex all the time, he was an older dude, would talk to me and recommend books for me to read, and somewhat of a mentor of mine. And I followed his advice, started reading about, he ended up being in life insurance. So I started reading this book called The Infinite Banking Concept by Nelson Nash. And it was about using life insurance as a very low risk investment vehicle. Obviously tax sheltering, but being able to get dividends and interest. And I thought that was really cool, using the power of compounding interest.
Take a loan out against yourself.
Yeah, being able to take out the cash value and use it on other things while your account still builds in value. And I thought compounding interest was just this really cool concept. And applying that concept to people my age who were very young at the time can really set not only myself but other people up for success. So we wanted to use life insurance as a way to help younger adults build a financial foundation.
So you guys were actually going after the younger market.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And it was interesting because I was 21 years old trying to, be a financial expert for other 21-year-olds without much experience. And that's what my mentor ended up encouraging me to do. He's like, you can learn all day, but you're going to learn most through experience. So just go after it, start an insurance agency, motivate and educate others to help you build it. And so I went after it. I had a few agents with me. We started in a small town and started trying to help my friends and things like that. And we had a pretty good first year, in my opinion, but things kind of fell short when we ran into some challenges. And the guy I started the agency with, he was somewhat of a friend of mine, and had a different plan, emptied out the bank account and ran, and so it left me in a position to kind of reevaluate things.
Yeah.
And so I knew I wanted to be a business owner because I realized I liked the game of controlling my own schedule, but being able to solve the problems that come up and not having to ask for permission to do things. Just learn about a potential solution, apply it, and then move on to the next challenge. And I really liked that fast-paced nature of business. And so I knew I wanted to be a business owner, but I didn't want to just rush into another opportunity. Right. I kind of understood my shortcomings with the insurance agency. A big shortcoming of mine was marketing. And so I really dove deep into learning how to do marketing and learning how to profitably grow business through predictable revenue generation.
Priority number one.
Yeah. And so I was online. I was on Facebook, oddly, randomly one day, and I saw a friend from high school. He was doing cabinet refinishing. And he messaged me. He was living in Tampa at the time. I was like, hey, what are you doing? We're looking for some help. And I thought working part-time or working kind of a job that I wasn't committing to being a career of mine was kind of a good move. I made it clear that this was somewhat of a transitional job for me.
Okay. This is my temp job.
Yeah, exactly. And so I accepted the opportunity to learn the ropes under them. Cabinet refinishing, I've always grew up having to work with my hands. We weren't given an allowance. We were basically paid to do chores and work for my parents' business.
Good parenting.
We had to earn, and so I was used to that. So that felt normal to me.
Yeah.
And so I started working with them. Learned that there was a lot to improve on in the industry. They were getting these cabinet refinishing jobs, making about $10,000 a week in revenue off of painting cabinets. And I thought that was so wild that people would pay so much to have their cabinets painted. I quickly understood it was very tedious and there was a lot of work involved.
It's funny. The first time I heard about this business, because I didn't find out about this business till much later. Stephen already had his sure shop. You had met Phil, of all people.
Yeah.
And he called me and said, hey, there's a guy looking for help growing his business. And I was like, oh, that's cool. What's he do? He said, oh, they paint cabinets white. And I was like, what am I possibly gonna do to, like, what's he need help with? He's like, they're trying to scale and help other people reach this idea. He's like, you don't understand, these guys are making millions painting cabinets white. And I literally just like, bullshit. Straight up bullshit. And then I ended up talking to you, and then I ended up diving really, really deep into what was going on at least in my market, because I'm in Austin, Texas at the time. Austin's blowing up. And I'm glad I didn't promise to eat my shoe, because I would have.
Most houses have kitchens, and so the market's pretty big.
They have kitchens, and they want new cabinets when they move into a new house, but they don't want to pay the price for new cabinets. and it's the money comes from the skill. Yeah, I didn't believe it.
Yeah. Well, this company in Tampa that I started working for, they were getting jobs because they were actually showing up to the houses to give quotes, meaning that a lot of homeowners were experiencing contractors that wouldn't even show up when they tried to schedule an estimate. You know, they weren't being called back.
I'll be there Tuesday, maybe.
Exactly. It was pretty ridiculous. And so when I realized that they were building a successful business simply off of just being present,
right,
being available, and there were a lot of shortcomings that they had that I was observing and a lot of areas for improvement. And I worked with them for about a year, and I realized that this very well could be the opportunity that I've been looking for. You know, it's a business that solves a problem that people are willing to pay for to be solved. And
good money.
The bar was set pretty low. And so I talked to them about it. It was a family-run business. And I'm like, I don't want to compete with you guys, but I do want to take myself to the next level with this industry. At that time, they went from doing one job every 2 weeks to where I became really focused on practicing what I was learning about marketing. So we started building out Facebook ad campaigns, Google AdWords, and we went from one job every 2 weeks to 4 jobs a week. And I wanted to start growing a business for myself.
Which is like $20,000 a month, roughly, for those of you that don't have any context.
Yeah.
Like a typical job in Tampa is going to be probably between like $5,000 to $6,000 a pop.
Yeah, to paint the cabinets, and you can get that done in a week. And so when you multiply those numbers, it ends up looking pretty good.
Yeah.
And when you add systems and processes, you know, a more efficient way to get jobs done, you lower costs, it could be pretty profitable. And so I told them I was moving to Orlando. I went over there, started the company, Elite Cabinet Coatings, and just went after it. I became obsessed with just building it. I would work through holidays. My family brings up stories all the time where, like, during Thanksgiving, I'm at my grandma's house. I bring a pop-up tent, and I'm spraying cabinet doors right before we're eating. You know, 15-hour days were a normal day, but I knew this was leading somewhere.
Yep. And
built it up to 7 figures, and realized that this opportunity that certainly changed my life can change other people's lives as well. And I realized that by helping other people, I could also help myself and make it kind of a win-win.
Yep.
And so that's when I connected with Phil, because we wanted to roll out a company that helped train people, and I could grow my company by helping people grow their own and building somewhat of an ecosystem, a community, filling a huge need in the market for cabinet painting.
Yep.
And I connected with Phil. He connected me with you, and we we've taken things pretty far helping people with cabinet painting businesses.
And that's come full circle because he's going to be with us too now.
Yeah. Phil has now joined, and he's setting up his own team in South Dakota. And you know, I continue to grow my cabinet businesses. You know, I got 3 locations in Florida, and don't plan on stopping anytime soon. We just want to keep growing. We do reserve Florida for me. So, you know, when it comes to cabinet startup and helping other people,
if you live in Florida, sorry.
Yeah, we focus on the other states.
But if you do another industry, epoxy, you know, seamless gutters, garage doors, the thing that I like about this so much is all of the principles that we use in cabinet startup, all of the principles that make this particular version and niche within the trades really effective. It works with the trades businesses. We can do all of the same stuff.
Well, tell them about your solar company. I mean, this guy is not new to hands-on businesses either.
And it was a little bit different. We moved out to California in 2014. I think I was 23 at the time.
Yep.
Maybe. Is that right? I don't know. I forget. Age is tough after a certain point. They all, after 21, they're all kind of the same. But yeah, so I think maybe I'm 24. We move out to California. We're literally going to be selling solar door to door, which my background was in door to door sales because, you know, somebody convinced me that was going to be a good thing to have. And in retrospect, knocking on a stranger's door and having the ability to sell them something right there is a useful skill. And so we're selling solar door to door. I sell a system where I make a $4,000 commission. And I was like, that was probably my, you know, that would have been 2 or 3 weeks at most other places. I did it. It took like 3 days. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be rich. And I remember thinking that. And then I'm like, well, that's interesting, man. They must be killing it if they can afford to pay me $4,000. I mean, that's really interesting. So I start looking up and figuring out what this actually looks like on the back end. And the way the solar industry was set up is it was so profitable, like it hurt my head. You know, these guys are buying a solar system for $10,000. They're selling it on a payment plan over 20 years where they're actually charging close to $30,000. And then at the end, they still have ownership of that equipment oftentimes.
Yeah.
And top that off with the fact that they got a tax credit that they can pass off to their investor. And I was like, oh my God, this is the highest markup industry I've ever seen. And the wild thing is we were saving homeowners 40% day one.
Right.
It's just
Getting
like
a win-win.
a win-win. It was like, you know, the common theme in my life, like, this is too good to be true. Like, yeah, no, it really is. And so I remember talking to the guy that was the VP of sales for this company we were working for, and we were all like, have you ever considered just leaving this and starting your own?
That's interesting.
Just why are you working for these guys? We can make...
The VP of sales told you that.
Me, a friend of mine named Lester, and another guy, Anthony, and one other person ended up talking to the VP of sales and being like, yo, this is silly. We should go do this on our own.
Okay.
And as that's happening, this company, Sun Edison, who was at the time the largest solar company in the world, they were a market cap of like $12 billion.
Okay.
It's a big company. They're looking to move into residential. They just did commercial. So we ended up meeting a guy that was looking to grow a team. We ended up partnering with them, and it started with me, my friend Dave, this guy Eric, another guy Julio, who's, you know, there's like those guys are up management, but I'm running all the operations. Dave's running all the sales. And we went from basically us four and two people that agreed to sell for us to within 18 months we had 45 like full-time reps out in the field.
Nice.
We had like a 12-person operations team. We were doing like $1.5 million a month. And
Sweet.
one of the things that we ran into, and I know because I was the VP of operations, like anytime the customer was really pissed off about something, it somehow got escalated to me. Like my job was I was just the punching bag, you know, which you know, somebody's got to do it. You don't want it to be the salesperson because they need to keep positive relationships.
Sure.
They've got to blame it on somebody. So
Right.
it's me. And one of the things that kept coming up is they're like, these guys said they're going to show up at this time and they didn't. You're right. Now we were the sales organization doing that kind of money. We still, you know, we have to outsource the installations because we're in 7 different states. You can't. It's very hard to have that as a vertically integrated business and work at that scale. And so one of the things we kept running into is the companies we're working with are hiring guys that, you know, I hate to say it this way, but they look like they recently came out of a detention facility. They look like prisoners.
Like they're desperate for a job.
They look like they were desperate for a job, and they didn't show up on time a lot of times. And, you know, homeowners like, well, I don't really want them here if the salesperson's not here.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of people that we're working with consistently. Like, I ended up changing our gear and making them all wear long sleeve shirts because the moms were getting freaked out by all the tattoos they had.
Okay.
I'm just like, okay. And nothing against tattoos.
Right.
But it's not what I think. It's what the homeowner thinks. Like,
Exactly.
who cares what I think? I'm
Yeah.
not the one paying the bills here. And so we ran into this problem again and again and again and again. And so, you know, it's funny that your first business ended in that because I think most entrepreneurs will tell you, unless you have a foolproof system, your first business usually doesn't go that great.
Yeah. Especially when you're trying to figure it all out on your own.
Yeah, we went from $1.5 million a month to like negative $600,000 in the bank account in a span of 2 months.
Yeah.
Primarily because this $12 billion company, you know, it's like Walmart's going bankrupt and they're taking you with them. Bye. And so after that, the whole collapse, I got out of that and got into online marketing.
Yeah.
Because I was like, well, I'm going to have my next business where I'm not going to be dependent on somebody else
Right.
for any of their stuff. And that's actually where you and I got connected. And you were like, this is the trades. I'm like, dude, I get the trades. I just can't believe you're making this kind of money with cabinets. Like, that is mind-blowing to me. But I know that we can convey that vision. And then since then, I think I counted, we've done 47.
Yeah.
We've had over 40
Set up
people
47.
come through this program.
Yep.
Start their own businesses, have, you know, amounts that, like, success levels that are so, it's almost intimidating to tell to new people.
Yeah, because it is crazy to see that someone who doesn't have experience in an industry within, you know, some cases just a couple months, a few months, is making, you know, life-changing amount of money.
Our mediocre guys are clearing 6 figures.
Yeah.
And I don't mean mediocre like they're mediocre people, but like their results are near the average. They're clearing 6 figures easily.
Right.
And that's
And it's in part of the reason, and I'm sure you would agree with it, part of the reason why your solar company became successful is because you had systems and processes and specific ways to do certain things, and you saw a lot of areas for improvement, and that could only make the business better.
Yep.
But a lot of these contracting-based businesses, they don't have systems. They don't have a process. It's someone who's maybe desperate for a job, getting into the industry, or it's someone who's, really good at woodworking or really good at installing countertops or windows, but they're not good at managing and understanding the nuances of running a real business.
It's a tradesperson getting a business, not a business person in the trades. And there's nothing that says that tradesperson can't become a legitimate business person.
Right.
But the number of trades guys that I know that, like, when you ask them about their craft, they get passionate, they get fired up, and they're like, no, I know this perfectly. And you ask them about the business, and they're like,
Yeah.
I'm like, well...
Like, we work off of word of mouth.
Yeah. Doesn't get you results in many places.
Right. Right. And so having a predictable way to generate revenue allows you to invest in the business in ways that can make you comfortable hiring a new person or getting a manager or filling in what might be your weak points. If you're not good at managing people, well, to have a good business, someone has to be good at managing people.
Yeah, 100%.
So if you have predictable revenue or you have free cash flow to invest in those roles, then you can kind of move on to the next challenge and your business can continue.
You can either learn or you can hire, but it gives you the flexibility of doing either.
Right.
Or preferably both,
For sure. And we've seen these things now in practice, and we've changed, in my opinion, a lot of people's lives. And we want to keep doing that, right?
100%.
And so
100%.
not only can you do that in solar, can you not only do that in cabinetry, but in all of these home services, the demand is continuing to grow, and the supply of providers is continuing to decline.
It's not about the trade. It's there are so many millionaire plumbers that you drive by, you look at the plumber's card, you're like, haha, plumber. And that dude can buy your house, your neighbor's house, your neighbor's neighbor's house, and probably not even notice it on the balance sheet.
If he manages his profit well.
If he manages his profit well, which and I think we'll prove over the course of this podcast, one of the things we want to do is we want to get in front of some of these guys that they're normal. They're normal dudes. You wouldn't know that these guys are absolute millionaires,
right? Because
they're not gaudy, they're not flashy, they're just somebody that is a consistent, reliable, shows up kind of person.
Yeah.
And I think we'll have a chance to share a lot of it. But yeah, I mean, the trade doesn't matter. I met a guy recently. I was back in Austin helping one of our partners launch their marketing, and we went out for a friend's birthday, and I met a guy. They're doing right about $2 million a month in sprinklers.
Yeah, irrigation is
$2 million a month.
Most yards need to be taken care of in some way.
Yeah, 30% profit margin. I said, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Will you drive me home your Maserati?
Anything. You can paint stripes on a parking lot. You can install vinyl floors. You can install windows. You
put
can
that little plate on the top of the gutter so you don't have to carry the leaves out.
Or a little paver sidewalk to the pool.
Yeah, and especially with
gutters.
The amount of like people that are getting ready, like boomers that are getting ready to retire and can't climb up ladders anymore. This is my pitch. Seamless gutters. Seriously, go do it. I want to do it. Go do it.
We will do it.
Yeah, we're gonna do it.
And the reason we are able to now, I guess we can call ourselves investors. We are partial owners in several different companies in several different industries, and we're able to do that because we apply the systems for different businesses that have the same challenges.
Yes.
Whether it's managing your leads or your customers or how to hire and train people effectively or knowing when you can reinvest or how much to reinvest in the business.
Yep.
Regardless of the service you provide, the way you manage that service can be very similar. And so we're trying to help expose these opportunities. And, obviously we're talking about business ownership right now, but my buddy who owns a window company, he's paying his window installer over $100,000 a year to install windows. And my average employee is making $50,000, $60,000 a year to paint cabinets. It's pretty wild what you can make even as an employee. If you don't want all of that responsibility, you can still make a great career out of it.
Oh yeah, I mean, I know for a fact that accountants starting in their very first year at most of the big four, KPMG, PwC, most of them start with a 4-year degree and somewhere between like $100,000 to $200,000 in college debt.
Right.
They're starting at $45,000 and with benefits, but they also work 85, 90 hours a week
and pay a shit ton of taxes.
Yeah, and they get a pizza party at the end of the week. It's like,
right, or rewarded with more hours to work.
But your guys on average train for how many months?
A couple weeks. They can usually start making good money. Most of the time, to make what I pay my guys in commission when they reach the end of their training, and that can take up to a month.
Up to a month,
where they can make $60,000, even more.
And how much does it cost them to go through your, apprenticeship program? Or
I actually pay them.
Yeah, you pay.
I pay them to learn.
Yeah, which is kind of part of the reason we think this is so awesome. Because and shout out to Mike Rowe. Mike Rowe, if you're watching, we love you. There's this idea in the United States that if you're not smart, you go into the trades.
It's wild. It's really wild to me.
And I look back. I got a 4-year degree that I've never used, and I was like, well, at least I had a piece of paper. And honestly, at this point, I don't even remember where the piece of paper is.
Dude, I was going to Florida State University, entrepreneurship minor. I was taking my entrepreneurship, or it was a franchising class.
Okay.
The professor told us how he was a multimillionaire owning franchises, and he didn't have a degree. And I soon after was no longer going to Florida State.
Yeah, so you're like, so do you recommend I be here? And he's like, not really. But then...
And, a lot of people's intention behind going to school is to get a good job.
Mm-hmm.
And I know many lawyers, some very, very personally,
Yep.
that got a degree, went to graduate school, paid all of this money, and their first job as a lawyer was making $50,000 a year.
Yep.
And that was normal. And it
the-
blew my mind.
It's the security, right? Because you're promised security. It's like, if you get this degree, you'll always be guaranteed to have a job.
Sure.
But my question is like, all right, well, yeah, but we paint cabinets. Like, so as long as people live in houses, I'm gonna have a job. I'm like, all right, well, let's check the back history. Like, how long you've been able to make a good living as a lawyer? Like 300 years?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Maybe 400.
The industry's been around for a while.
Maybe 400 years.
Yeah.
But before that, not really the same. But like,
I mean, Constitution was a contract.
yeah, in the 1700s. So we'll give it 500 years. Like, how long have you been able to make money as a home builder?
Probably even longer, building log cabins.
Yeah, I mean the pyramids were in like what 5,000 BC.
Yeah, there you go.
So
they were paid in different ways. Some people were paid in food and,
exactly.
and being alive,
and not being whipped. But not. It's one of those crazy.
The value exchange has evolved.
The value exchange has gotten better, but the reality is like homes aren't going anywhere anytime soon.
And arguably, the value exchange is continuing to get better.
I think so. I know. I think, and we'll prove that on this podcast.
Yeah.
We actually will prove that on this podcast.
Right.
There are lots of people.
We'll show testimonies and bring in other business owners and
and
show people you can make millions of dollars with these home services. It's absolutely insane, and you can learn the skills needed to run these businesses in less than a year.
And there won't be actually a better time than right now.
Yeah.
Like, there are more people retiring from the trades than there are entering the trades.
Absolutely.
That's
what I meant by like declining providing of the service.
Go
Demand
Google
is
it.
growing, the service is being provided, or the providers is declining.
Yeah, we're in a massive shortage, and that's not turned around. The people that are getting into it right now that take it seriously are going to...
And I passionately believe the reason for that huge dramatic decline and not the refueling of the providers is because the opportunities are not being exposed to people. We were not told in high school that you can make $100,000 a year installing windows.
No way.
We certainly weren't told that in college.
We didn't even have a trade section in my high school. There was no
Right.
woodworking. There was no... Like, if you wanted to work with your hands, hopefully you had a parent that could teach you how to do that. There was no... It wasn't even a path.
The wood shop at my high school was where we took, to hook up with girls.
Oh.
It was an empty room that no one used anymore. And, that I feel like should change. We need to expose the opportunities that exist in the trade. Our economy is begging for
there are going to be some
more
high
providers.
schoolers that are going to be really pissed with your suggestion.
Yeah, I mean, use that room for other reasons. But, I encourage everyone to look into the opportunities that exist in home services. And I've said this many times, I'm not passionate about painting cabinets, but I'm extremely passionate about what the opportunity can provide.
Well, that's a phenomenal talk. I mean, that could be its own podcast in and of itself, because one of the things that I find all the time is When people say, "Hey, I want to start a business," they're seeing me or Steven on the YouTube channel, but they're almost always talking to me.
Yeah.
And one of the interesting things is I find people that, I'm just looking for a perfect business, something I'd be passionate about.
Sure.
I'm like, well, are you passionate about feeding your family? Yeah. Are you passionate about going to all of your kids' baseball games, soccer games?
Right.
Well, yeah. I'm like, then what does the business matter?
Yeah.
If I find something that's going to meet my needs and give me the most amount of time freedom, like the average American is working in a crappy job at a cubicle they hate anyways.
Right.
Like, you're going to be looking for some passion instead. Like, look for something that makes sense and then find something you love in it.
Right. Replace the word passion with the word purpose.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Your passion may come, but you don't have to know what that is before you start building a financial foundation for yourself and your family.
When you can find lots of things that you like a lot, but you don't necessarily love. But if you have a business that you like, you're going to find it. Or you'll find, like I think Steven did, and a lot of our students are starting to find, once you have a job where you work through the challenges yourself and you can hire other people, you will likely love what the day-to-day looks like when you're no longer doing a lot of the physical labor.
Right. You may enjoy the game of business. You may enjoy the fuel that the business provides that you can then put into things you might be passionate about, whether it's real estate or, flying drones, whatever it is, painting. You could take the financial stability or take the profits and put that into something that you are passionate about.
It's way easier to have expensive hobbies when you make money.
Yeah, for sure.
Because drone flying looks awesome.
It does. My brother's all into that. It's pretty cool. He makes all these little videos and stuff. But, I'm hugely passionate about exposing these opportunities. You and I now you have a cabinet painting business.
Yeah, no, I have cabinets now. Yeah, 100%. Well, you can only watch people start this so many times. Like, I literally spent a year looking for a partner that I could help launch in Austin.
Yeah.
And you guys can go see him on the channel. It's Logan. He's an absolute monster.
Yeah.
And I love him to death. And I'm so happy we brought him in because, I get texts on Friday like, "Hey man, we just brought in an $8,000 deal." Yes, we did. Yes. Yeah. And he follows the system.
Exactly. It's funny how when you follow the process, you get the results. And we've now done this, dozens of times with cabinets, and we're doing this now with other trades. We're helping businesses get organized. But I really want to put these opportunities in front of people that have zero experience. Yeah. Obviously we can help the low-hanging fruit, in my opinion. People who have already started the business, it's very easy to shift some things and make it super profitable. But to take someone who thinks that their potential is limited to getting a $50,000 job because that's as much as their parents made, and then to help that person make $100,000 a year, and then potentially even hire their parents. Now my parents are retired, and I've been able to bring them into my businesses.
Gurnpreet hired his parents.
Yeah, we have plenty of students that turn this into a family business because it's a good business.
It's a great business.
And it's not the fact that it's cabinet painting, it's home services in general.
Yeah, 100%.
And so, when people ask us why the trades, well, it can turn into an hour-long conversation.
Yeah, it is such, like, it's a situation where it really is the tip of the iceberg, because within a lot of the topics that we've covered and within the concept of getting into the trades, there's so many different ways to go about it. There's so many different opportunities that exist right now, and there's that I'm aware of, and I literally for a time in my life helped entrepreneurs sell online businesses, everything from Amazon fulfillment, LinkedIn lead generation,
drop shipping,
like I all of these different businesses, I've seen them all. I have several of them.
Right.
I've got an ATM business. I've got and I love the ATM business. It's great, but it is not as simple or as easy, in my opinion, as the trades.
Yeah.
And I use the word easy in a different way. Let me clarify.
Yeah, simple.
Simple is a better word. It's hard work. You're not going to start $1 million business chilling in your underwear anywhere that I'm aware of. Just like you're probably not going to get a money tree. If you do, send me a message. I'll buy.
That is a money tree right there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it is.
Is it real?
Yeah. Flourishing.
So you can buy a money tree, but I don't think the Quickie Mart's going to accept these things, and that's really what it comes down to.
Not until we turn them into NFTs.
But what's cool is I think there's a very, very good opportunity here. There are opportunities to get into the trades where you can start a business that can produce over $10,000 a month in profit.
For
and
sure.
you can do that for an out-of-pocket expense of less than, I've seen guys do it for less than $15,000.
I started it with the deposit on my first job.
He started the deposit on his first job. Now, he also worked 15 hours a week and spent a year training by himself.
But we're talking about possibilities.
But we're talking about possibilities. It's absolutely possible. Now, the speed at which you do it is going to depend on the help that you have. But here's the other cool thing: we're not the only ones helping people do this.
Right.
And like we talked about this a lot. Like we're going to help 1,000 people get to the trades. over the next 5 years, and maybe faster. I would love faster. I would really love faster.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're definitely looking to go mainstream. I mean, you now have every political perspective agreeing with the emergency of labor shortage.
Yep.
You have other companies begging. We have contract with Home Depot that will even pay us to train other people. We've done that in the past, at least, and there's a huge shortage for people
Massive.
working in home services. And so, if you're curious about the industry, I encourage you just to start looking. You might be surprised with what you find. We're going to make this podcast all around the mission of helping educate people who might be interested, and then giving them a path to pursue that mission. Whether you're passionate about the trades or not, it could provide a great opportunity for you and your family.
And it doesn't have to be our trade. All the trades are awesome.
All of them are awesome. And so we're going to bring other people on this show with other businesses, other home service providers, and we're just going to show people what's possible, and we're not going to stop till we're happy with what we've done in
Until
this
there's
world.
no more shortage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And fortunately, there's quite a gap, so I think we'll be busy for a while.
Yeah, which is good, man. Busy is
we aren't good at staying still.
busy is better than bored.
For sure. So hopefully that was a kind of a good introduction for these guys.
I think so.
We'll stick. I think we're going to try to do this weekly.
Yeah, every the goal is every day, every Tuesday. Not
Yeah.
every day, every Tuesday at about 6 o'clock, and we won't always be in this sweet spot because
Yeah, we'll change the environment. Like I said, we don't like to stay still, so we'll show up to you guys in different environments, different atmospheres. But feel free to send us questions. Right now, we'll start to organize the community a little bit better. But right now, we have a central email, support at cabinetstartup.com. They'll go to both of us. If you have any questions about this or any other trade, like I said, we work in other trades as well. So shoot us an email at support@cabinetstartup.com.
if we can't help you, we will send you to the person that
Exactly.
can. And one thing I can promise, you might not always like exactly what we say, but we will always be candid with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're on a mission, and I think it's gonna be great. Like you guys, when you come here and you follow this, we're gonna share all the wisdom that we can. We're not gonna be holding a bunch of stuff back. Like it doesn't serve us, it doesn't serve you. The people that want to work with us will be because we've added enough value, and we've shown them that the expertise to go further than that. And I really hope over this next couple months we can master that and help a lot of people.
I agree. Well, great first podcast,
yeah.
bro. I'll talk to you guys soon.
Bye, buddy.